Hey guys, I just want to go through this review packet with you guys to get you ready for your final. The final will be given in Illuminate, but again, I'll send out information with that on Google Classroom. So the first thing that's going to be on your final is just solving equations. So we have two problems here. I'm going to focus on the one on the right. What you always want to do first is you always want to make sure that you simplify down each side of your equation. So if I'm looking at this one on the left, okay, if we look on the left side of that equation, it says 2 parentheses b plus 7. We know that we can distribute that 2. So we'd have 2b plus 14 is equal to 44. Now this problem in blue is now just like the problem on the left. So these are the same types of problems. So what we want to do is wherever our variable is, we always want to keep what's close to the variable and get rid of what's far from the variable. So I want to keep the 2 because it's right next to the variable, so I want to get rid of the 14. So I'm going to take away 14 on both sides. This would cross out. I'd be left with 2b equals 30. Now when we have our variable with only one value, we want to just do the inverse. So what's the inverse of multiplying by 2? We want to divide both sides by 2. And we get b equals 15. So our answer would be D. Now the other cool thing is I can check my answer by plugging in 15. If I plug 15 in right here for B, 15 plus 7 is 22. And then if I multiply that times 2, it equals 44. So it checks out. All right, so here we see a couple problems. Let's focus on this one on the left. Okay. If you want to do the one on the right, what you would have to do first is you'd have to distribute the negative 8. So let's focus on this one on the left. What we want to do first is we want to simplify down each side. Well, we can clearly see that the left side is already simplified, so we're just going to keep that 301. Now, over here, we can't add those together because they're not like terms. Also, whenever we see a number that's in front of a parentheses, right, like this, that stands for multiplication. So we have to multiply before we would add anyways. So let's go ahead and first distribute our positive 5. So negative 7x, positive 5 times 1 would equal positive 5. And then positive 5 times negative 6 would make negative 30x. So again, we have all these numbers in red on the same side, so let's combine our like terms. We have negative 7x and negative 30x. Well, if you combine those, you get negative 37x. The positive 5 has nothing to combine with. So now, here's our variable. Remember, when you have one variable, you get rid of what's furthest from the variable first, and you keep what's close to the variable. So let's get rid of the 5. 301 minus 5 would equal 296. And now we're going to divide both sides by negative 37. Okay. So when we divide by negative 37 on both sides, right, we know that a positive divided by a negative is negative, so we know it's got to be a negative answer, so we know it can't be 9. And when you multiply that or divide that out, you get negative 8. Okay. All right. So let's look at these two problems. They're a lot like the one we just did. So let's focus on, and remember guys, I attached the key to all these problems too for your practice. So if you do the one on the right, all you got to do is distribute the negative 6 throughout the parentheses and then start getting things by themselves. So let's focus on this one. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is if I look on the left side, can I combine these together? No, they're not like terms, so they're going to stay the same. On the right side, can I combine anything together? Well, I can't combine those together, but I do have a number in front of a parentheses. Right? If I have a number in front of a parentheses, I have to distribute it. So we're going to keep the negative 1. Then negative 2 times the 7 would equal negative 14p. The negative 2 times the 2 would equal negative 4. Now, again, look at both sides. Look at the side that's blue. Can we combine 6p and 27? No, they're not like terms. But on the right side, the red numbers, -1 and -4 on the same side, and they're also like terms. So we can go ahead and combine those. So keep the right side the same. -1 and -4 would make -5. And -14 doesn't have anything to combine with. Now, when you have variables on both sides, okay, if you look at the entire equation, we have a -6p and we have a -14p. They're on different sides. When you have variables on both sides, always get rid of the smaller variable first. Well, guys, -14 is smaller than -6, so we're going to get rid of it. So add 14p to both sides. That crosses out. -6 and +14 makes 8. And now this problem is just a two-step equation. Here's our variable. Keep what's close to the variable, get rid of what's further, so take away 27. We get 8 times p equals -32. When you divide both sides by 8, you end up getting p equals -4. Okay. All right, guys, with these, all they want you to do, sorry, let me get this set up. All they want you to do here is they just want you to get a variable by itself. So let's look at the first one, number 7. Let's say we want to get x by itself. What I would recommend doing is whatever they want you to get by itself, put a box around it. So we have -3x plus 2c equals 6. So we want to get this x by itself. So remember, when you want to get a variable by itself, you always keep what's close to the variable and get rid of what's far from the variable. So the 3 is right next to the variable, so get rid of what's far from the variable. So the 2c is further away. So we're going to take away 2c on both sides. That crosses out. Now on the right side, it says 6 minus 2c. I don't know what that is. I can't combine those. They're not like terms. So I'm just going to write this as 6 minus 2c. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to get rid of this -3. So this crosses out. So, if I look at my answers, notice that this is x, 6 minus 2c. I'm going to rearrange that order so the variable's first. So I have a -2c and a +6 over -3. Well, if you look, it couldn't be that one, it couldn't be that one, it couldn't be that one. It looks like it's D, but if you look at the problem, we have a negative in the bottom. Well, guys, if we think about that, if I were to take this and say -2 over -3, wouldn't that be the same as +2 over +3? And b over -3 would be the same as -b over +3. I'm sorry, -6 is what I meant to say. So my answer is D. If we look at number 8, they want us to get a by itself. So we have z, whoops. Sorry, my thing's not working very well. We have z is equal to -1 over a. Well, my a is in the bottom, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of it in the bottom. Well, how do you do that? You multiply it by the top. So that crosses out. So I get a times z equals -1. So now how do I get a by itself? I would divide by z, because that's what I would need to cross out. So my answer is -1 over z, so my answer would be A. All right, these problems, all they want you to do is to graph an inequality. Now, before I even do these problems, remember, if it is a less than or a greater than symbol, it's going to be an open circle. If it's a less than or greater than with an equal, it's a closed circle. So before I even do these problems, if I look at number 9, it has an inequality sign without an equal sign. So I know it can't be B right off the bat. Okay, so try to do things like that to help you narrow things down. Now remember, we solve inequalities just like we solve equations, except the one thing we have to remember is when you divide both sides by an inequality that's negative, you have to flip the sign. So let's look at number 10. How would you get rid of that 14 that's in the bottom so that m is by itself? You would just multiply both sides by 14. 14 crosses out. What we get is negative 70 is less than m. So we know that our answer has to deal with negative 70. So we know it can't be this one or this one. Now, if you notice, my answers have m on the left side. So if you look at the way this is written, the point goes to negative 70 and the opening of the mouth goes to m. So if I rewrote the order of it, if I put the m backwards, I would flip the sign and it would say negative 70. Now, this is saying that all numbers bigger than negative 70. Well, wouldn't all numbers bigger than negative 70 be to the right of negative 70? So my answer is C. All right. Let's look at number 12. Number 12 looks a little tougher. All right. I'm going to try and make it so we have enough room so I can write. Okay. We have 34 is greater than negative 6 minus 10x. So here's my variable. Remember, when you want to get a variable by itself, you always get rid of what's furthest from the variable. You keep what's close to the variable. So we're going to keep the 10. We're going to get rid of the negative 6. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. So that gives me 40 and negative 10x. Now, how do I get rid of the negative 10? I divide by negative 10. Now, here's what you have to remember with inequalities. This is the most important thing. If you divide both sides by a negative, you have to flip your sign. So this sign is going to flip now. And what we get is negative 4, and we have x. So we know the answer isn't C or D. Now, if I look at this, if I write it backwards, if I put the x on this side and the negative 4 on this side, it would have to be backwards. So my answer would have to be all numbers bigger than or equal to negative 4. Well, all numbers bigger than or equal to negative 4 would be to the right of negative 4. Okay, so here's some other problems. Let's look at number 14. It looks a little tougher. So the first thing I want to do is I want to distribute that negative 6. So the 123 is going to stay the same. Oh, and before I even do this, if I look at that inequality sign, it has an equal bar. So I know right off the bat it can't be this one because that has an open circle. Okay, so you can kind of do things like that to give yourself a little bit of a chance if you're trying to guess. Okay, we have our less than or equal to. We're going to distribute our negative 6. We get 12a. We get positive 30. And then the minus 3 on the outside. Well, guys, if I look at this right here, 30 minus 3 is 27. So let's just go ahead and write that. Now, here's my variable. Okay, I want to keep what's close to the variable and get rid of what's far. So I'm going to get rid of the 27. So I'm going to take away 27. Okay, 123 minus 27 is 96. Now let's divide both sides by 12. And what I get is 7. Oh, wait, not 7. I think I get 8. So 8 is less than or equal to A. Well, if I wrote that backwards, it would flip everything. So my answer is D. All right. So here, all they want you to do, guys, is to plug in numbers and then solve it. So what you have to remember here is your order of operations. Remember, you always do parentheses first, exponents second. Multiplication and division is done together. Addition and subtraction is done together. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Remember that these are done from left to right. So let's look at number 16. That looks a little tougher. Let's go ahead and just plug in our numbers. So h is 4. So what we have is 4 squared minus